What's going on, guys? On today's video we're going to be talking about the best knife in my collection. I figured we would switch it up since on the last video we did the worst knife in my collection. So as you can tell by the thumbnail, the knife is a zero tolerance, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Alright guys, so on today's video we're going to be talking about the Zero Tolerance 0562 in carbon fiber. This is a Rick Hinderer design, so I'm going to do a quick unboxing and we'll go ahead and get into the video. So one thing I always complain about is I wish knife companies would throw in stickers in their boxing. This unboxing is pretty basic. There's really not much to it. You have the knife and then you have the owner's manual, and I still have the receipt from when I purchased it. So shout out to Castlegate Knives out in Colorado. That's where I got this knife from. And I paid $250 for this knife back in 2018. So they've gone up a little since then. I'll post pictures on the screen of what the current pricing is for all of them. I think there are about 6 different models. Some are discontinued, some are out of stock. I'll put those comments on the screen for you guys if you're interested. But anyways, I wanted to talk about this knife because this is my favorite knife in my collection at the moment. Back when I purchased this knife, it was the most expensive knife that I had purchased, and there's just so much to this knife that I love that I was just really excited to share with you guys. So this video is going to be different. I want to make it as short as possible, so I'm not going to go through the specs. I'm not going to go through the description of the knife itself. I'm just going to do a quick pros and cons on this knife. And the reason I'm doing this is because I recorded the first video and it was 30 minutes long after editing, and honestly I just don't think you guys want to watch such a long video with a lot of details into this knife. So if you do want to see that, let me know. I'll post that other video. But again, I just wanted to do a quick pros and cons on this knife and show you guys my favorite knife in my collection. Alright guys, so we're going to be talking about the cons first. Now, when I say cons, what I mean is I had to nitpick this knife to come up with these cons. Now, these cons are not actual cons. I think it's just more of, again, me nitpicking it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the fake thumb studs. So right here, you guys will see that there are thumb studs on the blade itself, but you will quickly realize that you can't open this knife with your thumb. This is a flipper only. Next, I wanted to talk about the blade steel. So this guy is CPM 20CV. So in my experience, I don't like CPM 20CV. I understand it's a premium steel. I understand it's a great steel. A lot of people love it, but I just haven't had the best experience with it. I feel like the edge retention on these blades, or this steel itself, is just not the best. Every time I try and cut something, I use the tip because it's sharp and it'll cut things open for me. But anytime I have to slice through some things, this thing just kind of goes over it, and it just feels like glass when I run my finger through it. So obviously I got to sharpen it, but again, the edge retention just isn't there in my opinion. I feel like if they made this knife in a different blade steel, like maybe M4, MagnaCut, CPM S30V, or S35VN, I think they'd have a little bit more luck with selling these. Next thing I wanted to talk about was the pivot screws on the blade itself. So on some other ZT models like this one, you'll see that one side is recessed in, so you only have one screw on this side to unscrew to take this knife apart. Whereas on this guy, you would have to use 2 T8 screws to take them apart. So the other thing I wanted to bring up was the exposed carbon fiber. So there are only 2 places where it's exposed that I'm not comfortable with. So the first one would be right up here. there seems to be some exposed carbon fiber along with the bottom right here next to the jimping on the bottom of the handle. So I feel like that just leaves this knife with some room to get damaged, if you will. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was the flipper itself. So the flipper, towards the end of it, it has a hook to it, which I'm not the biggest fan of. After you flip it for a while, it starts digging into your finger and it just gets uncomfortable. So not the biggest fan of that, but this flipper also has a dual purpose. So once this blade is open, you can use the flipper to get a better purchase on this knife with this index finger. So that is a nice feature, but I wish that they had just rounded it out just a little bit more for it to be more comfortable. And the very last thing I wanted to talk about that's, again, a con, and I'm being nitpicky, is this knife has 3 different size screws holding it together. So right here you have a T6, and all 5 of these screws are T8s. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then on this other side, all of these are going to be T8. So 1, 2, 3, 4 are T8. And the screws holding the pocket clip together are going to be T10. So if you're taking this guy apart for any reason, keep that in mind. There are 3 different screws. Don't get them mixed up. Now on to the pros. Number one thing is this is a Rick Hinder design. And for those of you that don't know, Rick Hinder is a really well-known knife maker. He was one of the very first knife guys I actually saw on Instagram and just instantly fell in love with his blades or his knives. And you know, I aspire to have one of his knives one day, but they go anywhere from $400 and up, and it's just out of my price range at the moment. So to be able to get a Rick Hinder design knife for a cheaper price really meant a lot to me, and just honestly makes me want to have a Rick Hinder even more. All right guys, so the next thing that sold me on this knife, and probably the first thing that sold me on this knife, was the ergonomics itself. This knife, the handles on it are just chef's kiss. Everything about these grips just makes sense, guys. It's as if Rick Hinder or ZT got some clay, put it in their hand, and they closed their hand, and this is the molding that came out of it, and it just fits perfectly. So I have large to extra large hands, so this, I mean, it's like a glove, guys. I can't rave about it enough, how much this thing just fits in your hands. I don't get any hot spots anywhere. It's just perfect. So ergonomics was the number one seller for me. The next thing I wanted to talk about is this thing is a tank. So when it comes to ZT, I think their logo or their quote is overbuilt knives, and this lives up to it. I've seen in other videos where people would like to see less screws, and I do agree to an extent, but at the same time that takes away from the knife itself being overbuilt. And these screws kind of blend in with the style of the knife itself, so I don't have any issues with it. But this thing is just a tank, guys. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of the blade steel, but it's still a premium steel, and just the construction, everything, the 2 stabilizing lock bars. I mean, come on, guys, that's cool. You know, whether it's overkill or not, I don't care. It's overbuilt and made in the USA, and I love it. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, although I did mention that the flipper is a little harsh on you, the KVT bearings on this guy are so smooth. They are audible, and what I mean by that is the KVT bearings does have a very slight metal sound to it, and all that is just the KVT bearings moving. So it's nothing I'm going to complain about, but it is audible, but very minimal. You would have to, you know, be in a quiet room and really hear the opening action in order to listen to the bearings open. So very fidgetable. It has a mechanical audible sound to it too when you're fidgeting that I think a lot of people like or would like. So that's pretty much it, guys. There's nothing else to say. This is the #1 knife in my collection at the moment. I do have other knives that I still need to carry and want to test out, so I'll keep you guys updated as best as I can with these videos. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this answered some of your questions that you guys had if you're interested in purchasing this knife. I'll put a link below to Blade HQ's website of this knife if you guys are interested in it. I think currently it's $295 or $292, somewhere around there. And there are other models like I had mentioned. All right, guys, so that sums it up. Thank you very much for watching. If you guys want to see the full video on this knife, let me know. Again, it's 30 minutes long, so I didn't want to bore you guys. But if some of you want to see it, I'll upload it and we'll go from there. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.